Well, yes, computers were really in the dark ages at that point. There had been the GENIAC and the ENIAC, which were huge things. I think they evolved during the war, really. But I don't think I really ever thought about them. But in high school, I was always good at math, so I decided, well, I should go to college and major in math. And somehow, I can't really remember why I fixated on MIT, though my father had gone there. And I think probably I really wanted to follow in his footsteps. So I went to MIT. I graduated from high school at 16, so I was only 16 when I went to MIT. And looking back at it now, I think I should have been more frightened, but I was probably too ignorant to know that this really was not the greatest idea, because in a class of 990-some students, there were 16 women, which means we were a little bit outnumbered, but we all supported each other, and we managed somehow. And the computers, well, I started majoring in math because it was easy, and I think when I was a sophomore, as one of the, you had to take subjects in other courses. And I happened to take one in the electrical engineering department on computers. I'm not quite sure why, but it looked interesting. And as soon as I took that, I was hooked. I don't know, I was really confused at first, but I knew this is what I wanted to take, what I wanted to be in my lifetime. And I took every computer course that they had. Of course, these were big computers with lots of tubes and punched cards. And I even learned to program an analog computer. At that time, analog computers were almost neck and neck with digital computers in their importance. But nobody these days, I think, has ever heard of an analog computer. So it just grew from there. And after I graduated, went to work doing programming as a computer person. Now, the first place was Sylvania. And they were doing the programming for the Thule website. Thule, not a website, there wasn't any web. It was the BMU's phased array radar in Thule, Greenland. So I worked on that for a couple of years. However, shortly after I graduated from MIT, I was married, and I had a child a year afterwards. So even though I went back to programming for a while after that, for another year, when I had the second baby, I quit until they were bigger. Sort of an interesting thing that during the war they noticed that people could look at a distant object and tell right away, just by its motion, what it was. And they wanted to know how to train a computer to do this. TRADEX, that was the name of it. Tracking Radar Discrimination Experiment. And I liken it to, if you see a small furry animal, how do you know whether it's a dog or a cat? You can tell immediately if it's a 5-pound dog or a 5-pound cat. How do you tell a computer the difference? Because both have fur, they have a tail, they have 4 legs, and it's not at all obvious, but the human mind can do it. Well, how does the human mind distinguish a missile from the booster section? Well, we were out there, this was 1962, working on TRADEX. When I went out, 30, 40 years later, 35, 40, we're still working on the same thing, still working on discrimination. That was a big thing that I was working on. I was not on the main part of the discrimination, but on a peripheral piece. But we're trying to teach the radar how to distinguish. It's when a missile was shot and it came in, how do you know which is the warhead, which is the booster, which is the pieces that they are put up to fool you. And it's not easy.